Himawari is not a standard Jinchuriki. This is a fact that's been established time and time again in Two Blue Vortex. She's been compared to Kurama, and Jura said that her regeneration far exceeds that of a standard Jinchuriki, to the point now where people, like myself, have begun to formulate possible explanations as to what Himawari could be. Is she a human? Is she a tailed beast? Is she just the strongest version of a Jinchuriki we've ever seen? Or is she something that we haven't even thought of yet? But as we find ourselves grasping at straws to try and figure out what the little sister of the main character of this story is, one idea seems to keep popping up time and time again. And that is the idea that somehow, someway, Himawari is able to tie back her genetic lineage to that of the Ten Tails. See, whether it's through a possible connection to Kaguya because of her Hyuga and Uzumaki bloodlines, or the fact that she was conceived by Naruto while he was a pseudo Ten Tails Jinchuriki himself, something keeps drawing Himawari back to this idea of somehow being connected to a ten-tailed beast. But today I want to extrapolate upon that idea, because if Himawari is somehow attached to a Ten Tails, presumably the Ten Tails that was turned into a divine tree during the Fourth Great Shinobi World War, the Ten Tails that was absorbed by Kaguya thousands of years ago, Himawari would not be the only Ten Tails in the story, as Jura, the primary antagonist of this story, is also a Ten Tails, a humanoid Ten Tails, a Shinju version of the Ten Tails whose anatomy is still actually kind of a mystery to us the readers. And it seems as though these two, natural born through very different means, Ten Tails have begun to circle around the same drain. Jura wants to consume Himawari because of some biological urge inside of him that he's trying to itch, in hopes that the consumption of Himawari will answer what this nagging question is in the back of his mind that he can't yet identify. But I think we all know that Himawari's not going to get eaten by Jura. So what if, somehow, some way, Himawari's able to flip the script back onto Jura? What if rather than being consumed herself, she manages to absorb the power of Jura? Not only would this bring a massive boost in power to Himawari, but it would also essentially bring together two halves of a Ten Tails to make a whole. Crazily enough, this isn't just some headcanon to make Himawari one of the most powerful people in the universe. No, this is an idea not only supported by previous plot points, but also the possible projection of the future plot points. A twist that integrates Himawari into the story perfectly while making sure that she stays relevant in the power scheme of the Boruto universe forever. Yes, that's right, ladies and gentlemen. Make sure you have enough chakra to repel some flying wooden sticks, because today we're talking Ten Tails in Himawari will become a Ten Tails Jinchuriki. But before we get talking about anything, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. And if you're looking for one additional NC Hammer 23 video a week, guys, you can go ahead and find my Naruto reaction series using the fourth wall link in my description below. We're on to the individual fights of the Chunin exam. But before we get into all that, today we have to talk about our favorite recurring sponsor to the page, Raycon. Don't you just love it when one of your favorites makes a comeback and comes back even better, like Bleach with its TYBW arc? Well, this August, guess who's back and better than ever? Yes, it's Raycon with their everyday earbuds, because their classic model is now packing active noise cancellation. Yes, that's right, everyone's favorite everyday earbuds are now the best way to block out any kind of noise you don't want to hear and lock in to something that you do. Pair that with their absolutely ludicrous 8-hour playtime and 32-hour battery life, and your Raycons will never leave your ears. If I'm cooking at the grocery store on a run, you best believe these bad boys are in. And that's why Raycons are absolute must-haves. You see, I get sweaty when I'm at the gym listening to Otaku's Anonymous, and regular earbuds fall out of my ears, but not Raycons. I could douse my ears in sweat and not have to worry about these things at all. And what's even better is I can't hear all of the random gym noise because of how incredible the active noise cancellation is on these things. I mean, I can barely hear myself talk right now, and you know how loud I am. So what are you waiting for? Go to buyraycon.com/NCHammer23 to get 20% off the fan favorite everyday earbuds classic model. Sponsored by Raycon. So, Himawari, what's going on with that child? Well, like we've already said, in chapter 10 and 11, Jura compared her to himself, a tailed beast, and that's kind of a high compliment when you consider the fact that Jura is the Ten Tails. And most recently in chapter 25, Kurama not only stated that Himawari was closer to himself than she was a human or a standard Jinchuriki, but also, while they were training, Kurama told Himawari to think about herself as an embodiment of just chakra. And as tailed beasts don't technically have physical forms, as they themselves are just just chakra, Kurama trying to walk Himawari through training like this seems to confirm the fact that Himawari is more aligned to a tailed beast than a human, something only confirmed by the level of regeneration that we've seen Himawari be able to pull off. Whether it was fixing her leg after it ended up looking like a bent up pipe cleaner, healing abdomen puncture wounds from a scattershot tailed beast ball from Jura, or taking her healing ability one step further by healing Inojin's cannonball sized wound in his abdomen, Himawari has shown time and time again that apparently, at least according to Jura, that her regeneration ability surpasses that of a standard Jinchuriki, which is insane when you consider the level of regeneration that we've seen from your standard Jinchurikis. See, I'm not going to sit here and say that anything about Naruto as a Jinchuriki was standard, but even long before Naruto had what could be identified as a perfect relationship with Kurama, the outflowing of Kurama's chakra allowed for him to survive Chidori's straight through the chest. Now, obviously, after establishing what could be identified as a perfect relationship with Kurama, Naruto has also been able to survive things like a sword through the abdomen, or being absolutely pincushioned by chakra rods multiple times. And technically, even before Naruto busted open the gates to Kurama's cage, Nagato ran through Naruto with chakra rods through every single one of his joints, and Naruto recovered from that. Now, Naruto only recovered from that by turning into Kurama himself, but still, he walked away from it, and somehow Himawari has been able to display a healing factor that even exceeds that of Naruto's, as not only was she able to heal her own body from somewhat grievous wounds, something that Naruto and a lot of other Jinchuriki probably would have been able to do, but she was also able to heal somebody else, Inojin, from what should have been a fatal wound, something that we'd only ever really seen from people using the strength of 100 seal. But why? Why can Himawari do any of this? Well, the conclusion that I and a lot of other people have come to is that Himawari is a lot like Jura. That is to say, a humanoid Ten Tails. See, when it comes to being aligned with the Ten Tails, regeneration gets kind of nutty. While we've never seen a Jinchuriki of the Ten Tails heal other people, as Obito, Madara, and Kage are all a bit self-centered, the damage that the three of these people were able to recover from by tapping into the power of the Ten Tails is like nothing we've ever seen in Naruto outside of the strength of 100 seal. And I guess maybe Hashirama, who was apparently able to use the same level of regeneration as the strength of 100 seal with mitotic regeneration without hand seals. That's if you trust Madara, who may look at Hashirama's accomplishes with a bit of rose-colored glasses, but I'm gonna choose to trust Madara. Now, the best healing feats that we saw from any of the Ten Tails Jinchuriki come from Jubidara, who was multiple times able to regenerate an entire half of his body. Now, whether or not that was his left side or his bottom side, if you only cut off half of Madara, well, he was gonna be alright. But how is Himawari a humanoid Ten Tails like Jura? I mean, sure, the idea that she's a humanoid tailed beast seems all but confirmed. Two separate, very different sides of the equation entities in Kurama and Jura have confirmed that she has tailed beast-like qualities, and yet she seems to have the body of a little girl. But it is a pretty substantial jump to go from humanoid tailed beast to humanoid Ten Tails. Well, admittedly, there are a couple of ways that this could have happened. I mean, after all, Himawari is the female child of a man descended from Hagoromo's clan, the Uzumaki, who is said to be closely related to the Senju, the direct descendants of Asura, one of Hagoromo's two children, and her mother is the literal princess of the Hyuga, a clan not descended from Indra, but rather Hamura, Hagoromo's brother. And as the princess of the Hyuga and the clan head, Naruto logic would tell us that Hinata is actually technically the closest to Hamura in terms of genetic lineage out of anybody currently living amongst the Hyuga. Now, I know what some of you are saying, Nick, there's no way that a member of the Hyuga clan hasn't at one point slept with either a member of the Uzumaki, the Senju, or the Uchiha. And you're probably right. But Himawari is rarer than even that. See, because not only does she come from a father who descends from Hagoromo's line, and a mother that comes from Hamura's line, she was also conceived by a mother and father who both respectively received chakra from Hagoromo and Hamura, with Naruto receiving 6-pass chakra and the Sun Seal from Hagoromo in the 4th Great Shinobi World War, and Hinata receiving chakra from Hamura to power herself up to be strong enough to destroy the Tenseigan that Toneri was trying to use in Naruto the Last to throw the moon into the earth. So, not only does Himawari come from the lineage of Hagoromo and Hamura, but she was also made by parents who have the chakra of Hagoromo and Hamura, and both of whom who absolutely had the chakra of Hagoromo and Hamura while conceiving her. Because while it is technically up in the air as to whether or not Naruto currently has Hagoromo's chakra, his 6-pass chakra, we know up until losing Kurama, Naruto had access to 6-pass chakra. And if Naruto didn't lose Hagoromo's chakra after using it in the conclusion of the 4th Great Shinobi World War, there's really no reason for Hinata to lose Hamura's chakra after using it to destroy the Tenseigan after Naruto the Last. But hold up, Himawari's even rarer than that. Not only is she the female descendant of Hagoromo and Hamura's lineages with their respective chakras, Her father was also a pseudo Ten Tails Jinchuriki when he conceived her. And not only was her father a pseudo Ten Tails Jinchuriki, but he also held inside of him the entirety of Kurama, who represents more than 50% of the original Ten Tails strength inside of him. And if we learned anything from Kurama in chapter 25 of Two Blue Vortex, when Kurama told Himawari that now they were of one body and one mind, essentially operating as one being in a perfect Jinchuriki relationship, it's safe to assume that Naruto, who also was in a perfect Jinchuriki relationship with Kurama, operated with him in one mind and one body. So what does all of this mean for Himawari? Well, it means that Himawari has all of the components necessary to be a natural-born, albeit watered-down, version of Ten Tails Jinchuriki Kaguya, the first of her kind, a human so genetically set up that she's essentially born a Jinchuriki, or a tailed beast, a human bathed in not only the perfect lineage, but also so much tailed beast chakra that she comes out of the womb essentially already a tailed beast. See, because the tailed beasts were originally created by Hagoromo, and all of the tailed beasts tie their lineages back to the original Ten Tails. But the Ten Tails are creations by the Otsutsuki, brought from planet to consume lower-ranking Otsutsuki, turn into a divine tree, and grow a chakra fruit. Now, this means inherently that the Ten Tails are Otsutsuki. Now, as to the exact relationship that the Otsutsuki and the Ten Tails have, I can't say. But we know from the fact that Kaguya and Hagoromo were probably the most competent Jinchuriki of the Ten Tails ever, that having Otsutsuki DNA makes you more compatible to become a Ten Tails Jinchuriki. But Nick, didn't this power-up of Himawari's come by the way of Kurama's chakra amassing inside of her? Well, maybe. But I more see the awakening of Kurama inside of Himawari as the flipping of a switch more than anything. Kurama didn't rewrite Himawari's genetic code. Kurama himself says that Himawari is more tailed beast-like than Jinchuriki-like, and that wouldn't have been a change that Kurama amassing inside of Himawari would have caused. And thus, while Kurama acts as a kind of chemical catalyst to awake her to her tailed beast powers, I don't believe that Kurama is responsible for said tailed beast powers, though he can help her use them better, and his power will obviously make Himawari additionally strong, but I do believe that she was always on the path of using some kind of tailed beast power. But I don't believe her power, even with Kurama at full strength, is done growing. See, we've speculated for a somewhat long amount of time that in a ploy to get enough power to defeat Boruto permanently, Kawaki was gonna lunge on an injured Jura and try and seal him into his body, becoming a pseudo Ten Tails Jinchuriki. Now, a lot of this theory was predicated on the idea that we believed for a fair amount of time, and still kind of believe, I mean, nothing has disproven it, that somewhere deep inside of Jura is some lingering aspect of either Jigen or Ishiki, as we to this day have absolutely no idea how Jura was made. And because we have absolutely no idea how Jura was made, we also have no idea as to whether or not Jura, like the rest of the Shinju, has a soul thorn. However, in this last chapter, we did learn something pretty important about the soul thorns, and that's that the people that have their soul thorns returned to them, like Moeki or Shinki, don't see any kind of increase in power, and therefore the soul thorns do hold on to the chakra and powers of all of the Shinju. Moeki essentially fusing with Matsuri and Shinki essentially fusing with Ryu have shown, at least at this point, literally no increases to either of their power levels. So in the hypothetical circumstance where Jura does have a soul thorn, even if somehow, some way Kawaki was able to fuse with it, there's no guarantee that it would give him any power. Now, because of the increasingly mounting arguments against this theory, I've kind of abandoned it. See, not only do I not believe that Jura has a soul thorn at this moment in time, but I also believe that even if he did have a soul thorn, Kawaki probably wouldn't use it to power himself up. And thus, I'm going to be moving forward with the idea that Jura is exactly what Jura has told us he is. He is the Ten Tails. Somehow, someway, given humanoid form. But if Jura is the Ten Tails, then he needs to be treated like a Ten Tails and not a Shinju. Even in the hypothetical circumstance where somewhere some claw grime bit the juvenile emaciated Ten Tails and wrapped it up in a failed divine tree, if Jura is exploded by something like a Rasengan Uzuhiko, and for some reason Konoha decides to make the decision to place this soul thorn in this failed divine tree, making sure that Jura can't come back, something is still gonna need to be done with this juvenile emaciated Ten Tails. And as tailed beasts cannot be killed, as if they are killed, they just reamass somewhere else in a couple of years, a prospect that would be wildly dangerous with a Ten Tails. The only way to really consistently get rid of a Ten Tails is to seal it inside of somebody. Or, you know, use creation of everything jutsu to split the Ten Tails into 9-tailed beasts. But Hagoromo is currently floating in the Pure Lands with less power than he had going into the Fourth Great Shinobi World War, so that doesn't seem like a likely possibility. But Nick, couldn't the Ten Tails be sealed inside of Kawaki? I mean, like, Yeah, but it looks like Kawaki's gotten access to all of the power he's gonna need until the end of Boruto as a story, with Amado taking off his limiters, and B, with how chapter 25 ended, that is, Boruto offering his body over to Momoshiki if Momoshiki helps Boruto beat Jura, there's a growing contingent of people that believe that the scene that were shown in episode 1 and chapter 1 of Boruto, where Kawaki and Boruto are facing off against each other on top of a destroyed Konoha, actually is Kawaki trying to defend Konoha from Boroshiki. Thus, in actuality, even though we've been looking at that scene through the lens of Boruto being the good guy for a long time, Kawaki may actually be the good guy in that fight, and we're going to be doing a whole video on that soon, so make sure you follow and hit the noti bell. So if I don't believe that Jura / the Ten Tails is going to be sealed inside of Kawaki, well then where is he going to be sealed? Well, maybe to the person that he's connected to pretty much since his inception, Himawari. See, Jura wants to consume Himawari for a pretty straightforward reason, because inside of her rests the power of a pseudo Ten Tails. For those of you who don't remember, Jura wanted to consume Naruto before he wanted to consume Himawari. However, once he realized that the chakra signature that he thought was Naruto was Himawari, his goals shifted from Naruto to Himawari. But why? Why did Jura want to consume Naruto and/or Himawari? Well, the reason that a lot of people speculated is that some sliver of either Jigen or Ishiki is inside of Jura. And as Ishiki was essentially defeated by Naruto, this either could be a ploy of revenge by this new iteration of Ishiki, or just come from the hate and anger that every part of Ishiki holds for Naruto. However, that does require for Jura to have some sliver of either Jigen or Ishiki inside of him. Two things that have absolutely not been confirmed in really any sense of the word. So is there a separate, better explanation? Well, maybe actually. See, what if the real reason that Jura wanted to consume Naruto or Himawari is because the consumption of Naruto or Himawari will complete him? I mean, after all, we are talking about the Shinju, who feel a deep biological urge to consume the people they're most obsessed with. And yet the Ten Tails, Jura, who should most likely want to consume either Boruto or Kawaki, wants to consume Himawari or Naruto. Maybe the juvenile Ten Tails understands that there is Ten Tails power out there, and as the juvenile Ten Tails spent the majority of its short life having claw grimes carved off it, maybe that juvenile Ten Tails wants to feel whole, to fill that hole, that code left in its power with the power of a separate Ten Tails somewhere off on the same planet. Not only does this give Jura a reason to be pursuing Himawari in the first place, but also this prospect brings in two halves of a Ten Tails to make a whole Ten Tails. However, I don't believe Jura is going to be on the winning side of this equation, and rather Himawari will be the person to connect these two halves to make a whole Ten Tails inside of her, but not really so much inside of her, but just as her. Because like we said, she's not really a Jinchuriki, she's more like a humanoid-tailed beast. But why? Why is Himawari gonna come out on top in this fight? Well, A, because she's a main character and main characters don't die in Naruto, and B, becoming a Ten Tails Jinchuriki would make her immediately relevant in basically any future fight. But C, and this is the big one, Himawari becoming a pseudo Ten Tails who has the power of a standard Ten Tails and therefore can make an incredibly powerful chakra fruit on this already incredibly high potential planet would put her immediately in the crosshairs of none other than the character who just returned in chapter 25 of Two Blue Vortex, Momoshiki. See, the idea of the return of Boroshiki is a real threat. Boruto at the end of chapter 25 promised Momoshiki his body if Momoshiki lent Boruto his power to defeat Jura. And while I don't necessarily see this panning out exactly as Momoshiki wants it to, if it does happen, Momoshiki needs a Ten Tails to feed Kawaki to so that it can grow a divine tree and consume the chakra fruit of Earth, which would probably give Momoshiki the power to ascend out of Boruto's body and go on living his immortal planet-eating life. And while the Ten Tails that Momoshiki could use to grow a divine tree could probably just be Jura, who Momoshiki probably while controlling Boruto's body would try to force to consume Kawaki, I believe it's not only more interesting but also better writing to throw Himawari in front of the Otsutsuki crosshairs to involve her in the late game of this story. On top of this, Jura has already established that he doesn't want to eat an Otsutsuki, because if Jura is to consume an Otsutsuki, that's essentially death for him. He goes from a humanoid Ten Tails to a divine tree, stuck in one place forever, soon to be wilted after growing a chakra fruit that some Otsutsuki he doesn't even know consumes. So Jura would have to be forced into consuming an Otsutsuki, and while that is a possibility, I believe the idea of Himawari possibly being forced to either consume Boruto or Kawaki is substantially more interesting. On top of that, if Himawari is able to connect these two halves of two separate Ten Tails into a Ten Tails that has the power of the original Ten Tails from the Fourth Great Shinobi World War, that would be a much more advantageous situation for Momoshiki, who would be able to use that more powerful powerful tailed beast to make a more powerful chakra fruit that would be appropriate for the Naruto world, which would make an insanely powerful chakra fruit. So all this is to say that when Jura is eventually defeated, most likely through the combined forces of Kawaki and Boroshiki, I believe in a ploy to make sure that Jura never comes back and that the tailed beast problem is under control. The character that's already shown affinity with being a Jinchuriki and already exists as a pseudo Ten Tails will be the logical choice to seal Jura, or the Ten Tails, away into, thus becoming number 1 or 2 on Momoshiki's hit list. But that's just how I would write the later chapters of Two Blue Vortex. What would you guys like to see? Do you like the idea of Himawari becoming a Ten Tails Jinchuriki by absorbing Jura, or do you think it should go to somebody else? Let me know in the comments below. And while you guys are down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. Now, if you'll excuse me, it's one of the hottest days of the year in LA, and, well, I gotta go on a run.